Since the very first game came out, I've always had a kind of on-again, off-again relationship with Pokémon, but I feel like now is the time to fully commit, all in, for better or for worse. Oh no. Why does this feel like an abusive relationship? But still, I'm committed. At least Koraidon looks cool. So our goal for today is to try and see what a realistic Koraidon would look like. That's if, by realistic, we mean slightly more detailed than the in-game version with an anime girl sitting on top. And speaking of anime, this one is meant to be one of the best of all time. So let's try and combine the two, because, well, why not? And as any mechanic does, we'll start with the wheels. So it's important to get the scaling of Koraidon's disturbing wheels of flesh just right, because they'll dictate the size of the rest of Koraidon. Let's go with that. Yeah, that'll do. And it just so happens that this jam jar lid fits perfectly with my accurate scaling method. So once we've glued two of said lids together, we'll start to bulk out the shape of the wheel with Super Sculpey Medium. Then we'll add a tyre, making sure not to sculpt the part that's going to be covered by Koraidon's body, because that fits with my lifestyle goals of doing the absolute minimum required. Then we'll use the grip part of this hobby knife to give some much needed tyre detail. For the core of Koraidon, we used this painstakingly crafted tinfoil sausage, as well as some armature wire for his limbs. I promise, it does get better. These will then get hot glued to the wheels, of which there are two at this point, and then using some Fimo soft, we'll start to bulk out his, well, bulky muscles. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we're going to make Koraidon a roided out Chad, just because that's more fun to sculpt than if he was all flat and smooth like. And with the main part of the body sorted, we'll move on to making the head. And if you're anything like me, there's always parts of the sculpture that you're really looking forward to making, and other parts not so much. Koraidon's head was one of the parts that I was really excited to make. I love that it's basically a very stylized dragon head, very angular with some sharp clean edges, especially the mouth was fun to sculpt and shape. Since Koraidon lacks eyebrows, we'll have to rely on his eyelids to give him that angry smouldering look. And with the main features of his face done, we'll move on to some skin detailing, which is basically jabbing the clay thousands of times with a ball-tip stylus. Then we'll add his head to his body, having added off-screen some more armature wire which will later become his horn antenna thingies, before adding another thin layer of Super Sculpey on top of our already baked body, which I'll detail much the same way as I did the head, and we'll see some of that later. Now you may be asking, why didn't I just add all those details when I was sculpting the body in the first place? And I've got a good response to that. Hey, shut up. Before we add those details, let's make his claws. Now, all four of his claws are made in much the same way, so I'll just show you me making one. We'll start by shoving 4 finger-length pieces of armature wire into a lump of clay, and once that's baked, we'll wrap it all up in Super Sculpey. Then we'll shape some smaller lumps and sausages of clays to make knuckles and bones respectively. And then even smaller clay sausages will make up the pulsing veins coming out of his hand. And yes, I refuse to say wormy dealies for fear that north of the border will come out of nowhere and kill me.
Hey folks, my name is Adam and
I'm going to kill you.
Then we'll give this claw another pokey stab before making the other 3 claws off camera. And once the claws are attached, we can start adding rippling veins to other parts of the body. We'll also add some other details for realism, like this lizard dewlap. And yes, I did have to Google the name for that, as I thought the old man fleshy, saggy bit on lizard's throat wouldn't really cut it. But with lizard anatomy lessons out of the way, and more pokey stabbing having taken place, we can move on to sculpting our Pokémon trainer, which will be sitting on top of Koraidon doing this. And unfortunately, at this point I was having some camera issues, so we'll be starting by adding some cargo shorts to an already made head, torso and legs. So what I've done here is roll out some thin strips of clay that can then be added to the main body to build up various layers of clothing. And I'll use these strips of clay to clearly define the edges of the clothing, like the tops of the socks and the bottom of the shirt. And once they're cut to the shape that you want, you can then blend them into the rest of the body, saving you having to make entire pieces of clothing. Then we can start to add in the finer details, like the pockets on the cargo pants, pleats in the tops of the socks, creases in the clothing, and the collar and tie. And currently our Pokemon trainer is looking a little bit cold on top, so we'll give her a thick mop of hair. Now our Pokemon trainer is based on the generic design from Pokemon Scarlet, but with a few added twists like some motorcycle gloves, as well as a jacket that's meant to be a nod to the one worn by Canada in the Akira anime. But in the generic design she comes with a long plait which we're going to try to replicate. The problem with that is anything small and thin made out of polymer clay has a tendency to be brittle and break. So to make her beautiful locks, we'll move to using Cosclay, which remains flexible even after curing. So with the sculpting on Koraidon and the Pokemon trainer pretty much done, we'll move on to making the base. Off camera I took an inch thick piece of crafting foam and skimmed the top off to give it a bit of a gradient. Then we'll get to work etching out some claw marks to make her look like Koraidon has skidded to a full stop. But we want our base to look more like a woodland path. So with the claw marks in place, we'll smother the top of the foam with a mixture of PVA glue, water, wall filler, acrylic paint and sand. And when it's semi-dry, we'll slap on a dark brown wash that'll give it some much needed definition and texture. And while we're waiting for that to fully dry, we'll get on with the painting. And you'll be relieved to hear that since painting doesn't need much explaining, I'll shut up and we can enjoy this little montage. What a tune, proper banger. Anyway, with the painting all done, it's time to go back to the base. And we're going to put some grass verges either side of the path. To do that, we'll slap on some PVA glue mixed with water, and then using a static applicator, we'll put on some green flocking. Next we want to make some dust clouds using cotton wool. Now, dust clouds kicked up in dirt are usually, well, dirty. And this cotton wool's just too pristine. So to give it a nice poop cloud colour, we'll try dipping it in some water mixed with brown paint, and wait for it to dry. But even after having fully dried, they were still too clumpy and matted together. So these dust clouds are a bust. Out the window they go. Instead we'll do what I should have done all along, and position everything the way I want it, then overspray the cotton wool clouds with various shades of brown. And since there's still plenty of paint left in the pot, we may as well overspray some shadows onto the pathway. Then we'll add a single foam rock because I can, and it's something for Koraidon to make friends with, I don't know. And then paint the foam sides with matte black paint. And then finally, in a fitting homage to the pill on the back of Canada's jacket, we'll design a little Pokeball on Procreate, then print it out and put it in place. And then I think we're just about done here. Well, my friends and fellow rookies, we made it through another episode. Well done us. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, you're mega awesome. Give yourself a warm, overly long, uncomfortable hug. And why not spread the love by clicking that like button and putting a comment down below. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do so, it really helps. Also, tell your friends and family, even that one really distant, weird cousin you haven't spoken to in years. Give him a call, ask him to subscribe. Why not? It could be the beginning of something special. I'm going to be taking a break over the holidays, but we'll be back in the new year with much more content. So cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.